Well, welcome. This is the October regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Lake Mills Area School District. The mission statement for the district is preparing all of today's students for tomorrow's opportunities. I would ask for verification of the meeting notice.
Yes, it was posted on the LMASD website, at the Lake Mills Post Office, the Bank of Lake Mills, LD Fargo Library, and submitted to Lake Mills Leader. There are additional noticing locations due to the requirements because of the refinance that's, or not the refinance, because of the borrowing of, the potential borrowing of money. Sorry, I just reworded that so horribly.
Thank you. Next item is the approval of the agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that you wish to take up separately? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
I move the board approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. On a voice vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is adopted. I will now call the meeting to order and ask if you would join me in a pledge of allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if we can have a roll call of the members, please.
Brianna Beslick. Here. Dawn Delaney. Here. Ken Eimers.
Here.
Amy Litcher. Here. Robert D'Imperio.
Here. And it gives me a good deal of pleasure to introduce our student representative for this school year, Ms. Sydney Williams. And if you would take the oath of office that Dr. Delaney will administer.
Stand up. All right, Sydney, I'll have you raise your right hand, and you can then read the oath out loud.
I, Sydney Williams, having been elected or appointed to the office of Student Board Member of the Lake Mills Area School District, but have not yet entered upon the duties therefore of, swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will faithfully charge to the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Thank you. And
Thank you. Welcome.
we'll sign right up here. Thank you.
Ms. Williams, I know this is your first meeting. Is there anything that you would like to report on?
Yeah, so, hi, I'm Sydney Williams. I'm the senior class president of Student Council at the high school, and I'm here to give you some updates on the high school. This past week, as many of you know, was our homecoming week. Within this week, we've had lots of participation in many different activities, like our Wednesday night powder puff and Ironman volleyball. We also had a great time with our Friday activities that each high school grade does halfway through the day, like painting benches, decorating hallways, and making floats. With those activities, they are a competition which resulted in seniors and juniors unfortunately tying. Then on Saturday, we had a great time at the dance with students being respectful while having a fun time. And then I was also asked to give some updates on fall sports. So for tennis, this last week, their overall season ended. They went 3-2 in conference and had 2 girls place first team all conference. This past week, they had a subsectional and a sectional with one of the girls, Claudia Curtis, moving on to state and will be playing at Nielsen Tennis Center this Thursday. For volleyball, they are currently 8-0 in conference with a big win over Lakeside last week. Also, this last week, they clinched a share of the conference title, and that was the first time since 1990. Football is currently 5-1 in conference and is tied for first in conference, looking for a win this week, which would give them at least a share of the conference title for the second time in 30-plus years. Cross country, both girls and guys teams are doing really well with lots of lifetime bests for runners. With the girls, 4 are trying to qualify for state, and they also have varsity conference this Saturday in Watertown. Soccer is currently 5-2 in conference. Tomorrow they will be playing Lakeside for their last conference game, With playoffs coming up soon, they received a seventh seed playing Platteville at home on the 21st. And lastly, mountain biking is currently 9th in the state for Division I. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We move into the administrative reports. Ms. Naylor, Director of Business Services.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. So I will start out with our line of credit. So there's a couple times throughout the school year in school districts where the cash flow is low, and those are in November and December, and then again in May and June. Our district's been fortunate enough not to have to do any kind of cash flow borrowing during those times, but in the event of an emergency, I've been able to establish a line of credit with our local bank. So this is something that we've done for the past, I know, 6 years, and we have not had to draw upon it, nor do I think we will again. However, again, in case of an emergency, it's been a credit line has been established in the amount of $1 million at an interest rate of 2%. So this is later on in the agenda, the consent agenda, to be approved. This week is National School Lunch Week. So typically our Director of Food Service has been able to do a lot of fun things in the buildings. So she's going to try her best to do that. She's been doing a lot of keeping up with the demands of the food service right now, that department. They've been able to utilize the produce from a lot of the school gardens and offer some really fun soups and different recipes to the students and staff. So that's been kind of something neat to report on. In regards to the budget, I will be submitting a complete budget update at our October 25th meeting, and that'll include the revised budget as well as the debt refinance that we've been discussing, and then we will be able to set the tax levy at that meeting as well. And that's all. Any questions?
Yes, the short-term borrowing, that if we needed to use that line of credit, it would be repaid when we receive payments from our various sources. So
Correct. Sometimes those tax payments come a little bit later for districts. And again, it hasn't happened for us. We have a fund balance, a healthy fund balance, so we shouldn't have to. Although we all know that things sometimes happen in emergencies, so hopefully that won't, but correct, it would be paid off right away.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Olson.
All right, so we have the school perception survey on the agenda for possible approval. We've worked with Bill Foster and the school perceptions team in the past, and so what the purpose of this survey would be to gauge the support of a possible referendum for the construction of a new intermediate building, as well as an operational portion of the referendum to run that building. So it's not just been me that's worked on that, but it's the whole EUA Findorf core team that has looked at what the core team has been working on and trying to illustrate that through the survey. And I know, Dawn, you had a couple of questions possibly about that, so I don't know if you want to.
Now. I've got, well, one question was, I think some of us might remember when we were in the process of building the elementary school, that the capacity was listed as about 600. So I guess some clarification of how it's now changed to, was it 508? So I guess.
Right, and, that was with working with the core team and on the community presentations, that wasn't something that they brought up to put on the survey. I know they kind of look at things being a little bit more succinct and flowing, so I think, it's addressed in the slideshow and in the community presentations. So I think if we had possibly individual questions about that, and we did, the one thing we did add on that last revision was for people to look back at our facility website that Megan just completed today, to look at the link to the virtual presentation. So that was recorded, as well as the slideshow is also there for people to look at. And so I'm available for questions as well, either via phone call or an email or however anybody would want to communicate with me. But I know that was part of the slideshow that we looked into, was the fact that when we had opened the building, we'd stated a certain capacity of 600. And then as we are looking at it now, lowering that capacity, and I thought Amanda Thompson did a good job in that part of the presentation of just stating that, you know, the current build, when the school was built, it was based off of class sizes of 25. We definitely don't have class sizes of 25 at the elementary anymore. And just even the way that we're teaching students, our attempt is to keep the class sizes lower in 4K, kindergarten, first grade, and then just up a little bit higher in more of the second, third, fourth grade. So that does by nature lower the number of students that are in each classroom, which lowers the overall capacity of the building. But just due to the fact that we are teaching reading and math in more of a small group instruction format, we're also addressing a lot of the social emotional needs of students in the classroom. And then also, I mean, just due to what we've seen, you know, during this COVID period, not wanting to, you know, pack a lot of students into a room at one time, also just for some health and safety issues. So that did lower the overall capacity. I think the other thing that was noted was, when the elementary was built, it was not meant to house the 4K sites, because the district at that point was had more of the community 4K mindset. So the goal at that time, from what I've been told, was that the community sites and the daycares in town would do the 4K education, where now we're bringing that in-house. So we do have the 2 sections right now in the elementary, and they were renting space at the Methodist Church for the other 2 sections, and so we would like to bring all of that in-house as well. So I guess part of what, when we're working with the school perceptions team, from working with them over several surveys, I know they have that kind of scientific mindset as far as collecting data, and I think they kind of feel like this is what we need. And I know, because we suggested several other revisions to them, and they're like, nope, like, we know from conducting other surveys, this, we want to be succinct, we want to do this. And so they're very particular, and I think the reason why is because their survey data is so incredibly accurate. It really, what they see in the surveys matches up to what the votes actually end up being when districts do go to referendum. So, you know, they're a little particular about how they conduct their surveys.
Thank you. Makes sense.
But you know, if anybody, we didn't, and I can kind of go right into that, which is the community sessions recap. So we didn't have high attendance at either one of the sessions. We did mail that out in the district newsletter and advertised it. It was in the paper as well. So we only had 5 people at the in-person session, and then 5 people at the virtual session. I was actually expecting quite a few more people at the virtual session, but that is recorded, so anybody in the community can go on the YouTube link that is out there on the facility page. There's a link on the home page that look through the slideshow, listen to the presentation, call any board member or me for any questions or any clarifications. The feedback that we got from the people in attendance was they didn't have a lot of questions, because I think we really, it was a pretty thorough presentation. It's about 45 minutes or so. So it was pretty lengthy and explains things in depth. I think as we heard from the people that were there, they liked the slide towards the end that really showed how the core team vetted several different options, and it explains why we didn't go with those options. And so I think that's also a key slide. And we talked through traffic issues and the fact that at least 100 cars could queue up in the parent pickup drop-off. So I think we really, as through the core team, as they've explored this option, really did do its due diligence in working through all of those potential issues. So now it's just a matter of, is the community going to support moving forward and creating more space in the district, or do we need to go, you know, back and revise the plan further? So the elementary school, though, is at capacity, especially now that we've added a 6th section of kindergarten and a sixth section of second grade, so it is growing. All right, I'll go back up. I have brought some revisions to the pandemic plan, I'll just say pandemic plan for ease. And really what it was just some questions that Tony Zastro, our school nurse, was getting from parents as she was making phone calls home about quarantines and just the procedures. And I had received a few emails from parents like, all right, like my child tested positive, now what? And so as we got some of those questions, Tony and I just went back through, and it's like, oh, we need to explain some of these details a little bit more fully. We do not have any changes in the face covering requirements. I will be bringing back a recommendation to the board in November with some metrics. We are working with Jefferson County on that. And I knew they were coming out this week with that plan, so I didn't want to get ahead of them. I wanted to wait and see how they were using the transmission rate. The one thing I didn't want to get into is what some of the districts are doing, where they're switching every 2 weeks or every week. That is too hard on kids and parents and teachers and the administration, not knowing from 1 week to the next if you're masked or unmasked. We've also seen, as we look at the news from around the state, we've seen a lot of school districts shifting to virtual instruction because of transmission in the schools. We've seen a lot of cancellation of athletic events around the state, too. We've been fortunate. Our case rate has still remained very low. Parents have been fantastic at keeping kids home if they're sick, about getting them tested. So we've been able to contain things. So we've not seen, with not quarantining close contacts, we're not faced kind of with like the fact that we're, short teachers or things like that. So we've really been able to keep the transmission in our own schools to a minimum. So, all right. Then, the strategic plan update. We are continuing to work through, once again, the details of the strategic plan. So Amanda, and Melissa, and I will be working with the counselors to round out the CTE, social emotional learning portion of that plan, attaching some metrics. Part of, I think, the benefit of having the Personnel Finance Committee meeting, too, is really looking at staff wellness, being able to retain quality staff, and I think having some input from the Personnel Finance Group as well as our Wellness Committee in the district will help with that. So this first year coming off the strategic plan is still very much planning and getting things in place as we move forward. And then finally, we're working yet on the COVID testing clinic. I have submitted dates and times to Novir, who is the testing agent, so I'm waiting to hear back from them. We are looking at the company will do the COVID testing. Right now we're proposing Mondays and Wednesdays from 3:30 to 5, but doing it up at the district office as part of a drive-through clinic, so we're not having any potentially sick people walking into any of the buildings. The reason that we did at the district office as well is we've got doors with windows that go right into the parking lot, so the person can see if somebody drives up, go out, administer the test, and then people can be on their way. It is only open to staff, students, and immediate family members of students, including grandparents or anybody that might have been affected if there's a positive case in the household. It is free of charge, but people do need to pre-register. They can't just drive up and ask for a test. They need to have their information in the site, and once I get all that information, I'll be sharing that with parents as well, and we'll continue that for as long as need be. Obviously, I don't potentially see that going past this school year or maybe much past late spring into the school year, so we'll just kind of see how that goes, but they need to hire their person to come out and do that. So like I said, no cost to the district at all. We just have to monitor it at a district level, and by that, just if there's any problems they would have with anything, we're just kind of more the logistical piece of that, so. So with that, that is the updates that I have so far.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is community input. We have a number of people, 5, who have asked to address the board. We will allocate 3 minutes per speaker to do this. And we really appreciate at our last meeting that people were showing respect to one another. We would hope that there would be no disruptions if there is. And after being asked several times, we would ask a person to leave if they wanted to be disruptive. But there's an opportunity here to address the board. When I call your name, if you could come up to the podium and indicate your name and your address. And we have the timer up on the screen. So the first person who registered is Sheena Wiedenfeld.
Hi, I'm Sheena Wiedenfeld. Address is N6414 Wolin Road here in Lake Mills. I am speaking on the email I sent you guys. I sent you guys various studies on the effectiveness of masks, risk of wearing them, and the CDC studies that are used to justify kids wearing them. If you took or take time to read them, you will find little to no statistical evidence that supports outbreak rates are reduced by masking. A couple studies did show a small percentage in reduction of particles breathed, and that is consistent with the percentage of air that's recycled, which is about 1 to 4%. You will also see that the CDC used phrases out of context and left out phrases that would go to show that the effectiveness is not proven. I sent a large file on environmental hypoxia and various effects of environmental conditions when oxygen is contained at 17%. Studies that showed the likelihood of headaches and lightheadedness, all symptoms we expressed last time here that our child suffered. Since being in the Shield, which I appreciate, her headaches and lightheadedness have ceased, and instead of coming home crashing without energy, she is back to her normal self, so I'm very appreciative of that. In addition to these studies, I asked 2 things: create specific and disclosed guidelines and plans for unmasking, and present a data analysis validating your reason for mandating masks as health interventions for the masses. Given the lack of, no offense, medical expertise, authorization, and legal authority, you have, at the very least, should be validating your choice to make medical choices for others. I also encourage you to stress to our public health officials that you guys are not public health workers and nor need to act like ones. Instead, the county should be creating mandates if they see it's justified instead of strong-arming school boards. Whatever medical number they need to do so obviously isn't there because they're not enforcing any type of county-wide mandate at this time. I'm also upset at the lack of consistency the mandates have had. Even if sports are a choice, they're on school property and they expose our entire student body to each other. 3 days a week myself, I coach first and second graders, and then they play other first and second graders and go to school on Monday, exposing to, and this goes on in every grade. So I ask that you, with the lack of rationality here, I ask that you guys remove the mandates off of at least the students. They have their parents to make health decisions for them.
Thank you. The next speaker is Andy Wiedenfeld.
All right. Hello, my name's Andy Wiedenfeld, N6414 Wolin Road, Lake Mills here. So I'm here tonight again to discuss the restricted oxygen levels under masks and also defend my last demonstration. So last time I spoke, both my demonstration and submitted letter to the editor were based on federal occupational health laws. The very laws that require employers to ensure a minimum of 19.5% oxygen in any atmosphere that a worker could enter. I brought a very specific and accurate tool that will give you a real-time atmospheric reading under the masks. I told you that you could not debunk this, and they still cannot. So when a doctor writes a letter stating masks are safe and that I am wrong, what type of tool did that doctor use to come to that conclusion? Do you know how many medical misdiagnoses occur in the U.S. every year? I'm not picking on our great medical workers. God bless them all, okay? God bless all of you as well. I'm only stating that they're human. They're capable of misjudgment, occasional mistakes. They're also capable of carrying a narrative if they see fit. So once again, they are human. This monitor is not capable of any type of misjudgment, narrative, or any thought for that matter. It's a tool. It's designed to do what it does, monitor air. It looks for oxygen, not a narrative. With OSHA, respirators are used to protect workers from contaminants and toxic atmospheres, such as silica dust, asbestos, lead, and so on. Employers are required to medically evaluate, train, and fit test their workers. One specific training to do is when the worker feels lightheaded, they're supposed to take that mask off, that respirator. It's because their oxygen is restricted. Okay. So let's do some math. Air is typically 21% oxygen. When humans breathe in, their body uses oxygen and exhales an average of 3.8% carbon dioxide. So what is the simple math? 21 minus 3.8, what is that? 17.2. When I put that device underneath my mask, every single time I'm going to get between 17 and 18% oxygen. That's because the carbon dioxide that I'm exhaling displaces the oxygen and doesn't allow it to come in. Skeptics say the oxygen passes through the mask just fine. If oxygen passes through the mask without restrictions, how is it going to stop COVID? So, what is it? Either I'm correct and we should allow parents to weigh out their child's risks themselves, or maybe I'm wrong, the air does pass through just fine, and it also allows the contaminants in the air to come through as well. So, rendering them basically for show. That's all I have to say. I mean, again, I'll say, no one has an easy job in this world right now, and God bless every single one of you, okay? We're all different, and we should all care about each other, no matter what we're doing, where we're doing it, okay? And everyone should have a choice in their lives. So, clap for our...
Thank you, Mr. Wiedenfeld. The next speaker is Joseph Lawler.
All right. Okay, so my wife has a migraine tonight, so I'm reading this for her, so if it's a little choppy, I had about 20 minutes to prepare. All right, so we have all been in this mask vaccination experiment since March of 2020, and my family has suffered negatively, or negative side effects of prolonged mask wearing. Our government leaders are not releasing valid data to support prolonged mask wearing is safe or effective. There has yet to be a study that proves masking reduces the transmission of COVID significantly enough to outweigh the negative effects. A COVID molecule is 5 times smaller than a strand of hair, and I'm going to tell you, I wear a mask all day at work, and these things are popping right through there. So, the virus is out in the air with or without the mask. What's more effective is to teach proper hygiene, social distancing, staying home when you're sick, and allowing our bodies natural immunity to build. Statistically, COVID has a 99% recovery rate globally, yet we allow mandates that impact millions in negative ways to meet an agenda of fear and coercion that is pushing vaccinations on our children. We are fearful and wonderfully made by God and do not consent to this experiment. These mandates continue to infringe on people's medical freedom. We are in a country under distress. We are healthy Americans whose rights are being stripped away from them with no validation. We are not required to consent to this experiment. I want to note the Nuremberg Code, which states, I think that's a code of when you're doing an experiment, or when you're doing an experiment with people with informed consent. So the voluntary, number one, the voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. This means that the person involved should have legal capacity to give consent, should be so situated as to be able to exercise free power of choice without intervention of any element of constraint or coercion, and should have sufficient knowledge and comprehension of the elements of the subject matter involved as to enable him to make an understanding and enlightened decision. It goes on to say it should be made known to the experimental subject by the nature, duration, and purpose of the experiment, the method and means by which it is conducted, all inconveniences and hazards reasonably to be expected, and the effects upon his health or person which may possibly come from his participation in the experiment. So basically, what we're saying there is that there's not enough info that tells us, does 8 hours a day in a mask, what does that do to us? We don't really know. I can tell you I wear a mask all day, 8 hours a day at work, and I feel exhausted a lot of times. It's wet within an hour.
Mr. Lawler,
Okay.
thank you very much. Your time is up.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe a little hard to read. Brenteisenberner? I apologize if I mispronounced your name.
It's iceberg. You were nice, you mean iceberg. Good afternoon or evening. Back when COVID started, I think the rallying cry was to follow the science. Somehow that must have changed, or perhaps only portions of science seem to matter. I've talked to a lot of school board meetings over the last few months, and here's where I used to spout off statistics about the latest CDC update showing a de minimis IFR for children aged 0 to 17, or the fact that data supports that schools are not breeding grounds, nor are students significant vectors for the spread of COVID-19. But after 19 months or so, these data points seem to fall on deaf ears. Logic as well seems to have been thrown out the window. Children can play with their friends outside of school or even at recess without masks, and that's fine. However, in class only, masks are required. They can stand shoulder to shoulder with 80,000 plus sports fans watching a Badger game. They can stand shoulder to shoulder with hundreds of sports fans watching your local teams play. There's no logical rhyme or reason for this. They could be unmasked all summer without issue, but when school starts, it's back to logical, fear-based decisions. There's one data point, however, I wish to emphasize. The science has shown the effect of masking and social distancing have had on children. As we all know, humans are social creatures, and our social development is mainly brought up during our youth. Lack of interaction with others is extremely harmful. On May 25th, 2021, the Office of Children's Mental Health stated that in the last year, children committing acts of self-harm doubled. Wisconsin now ranks 5th in the U.S. for self-harm ages 6 to 22. The state DHS has admitted that school policies and social distancing are to blame. So my question for the board is, when did you look for any mental health survey on your student body? Mental health among students has declined for 19 months. Keeping masks required may very well be the cause for the next self-harm incident, and you all will have to live with that. Based on the science, it is in the best interests of total student health to approve mask optional. I'm sure some of you may have heard by now, I'm an attorney and I've been hired by various members of this community to represent them. Some of you may have even read the letter from my law firm recently. I won't discuss that much further than the letter, and I'm sure that's going through legal counsel, but I do have some free legal advice for you. I have significant experience with masking, quarantine, and schooling, to include in front of the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. I can tell you, should masks continue to be required, there will still need to be exemptions. If a parent wanted to apply for a religious or medical exemption, it's extremely easy for them to do, and it creates a legal minefield that this board and district will have to navigate. If you wish to have an example of this, ask the former Tomahawk superintendent why he is the former superintendent. Speaking of which, and as a slight aside, Dr. Olson, I believe you mentioned quarantining. Who has a statutory authority to quarantine any individual in this state? I can guarantee it's not you. And more free for legal advice, watch the news. All right, I'm filing lawsuits against various districts throughout the state for their illegal quarantining procedures. I've represented numerous individuals with masking and quarantine from grade schools to colleges and universities, as well as staff from colleges and universities. Most of these have ended in a confidential settlement. Although I am proud of securing these victories for my clients, I know that they deplete resources from schools that should be used for mental health and education of their students. Nobody here today is arguing to forcibly remove masks for individuals. What parents are asking for is the ability to make their own medical decisions for their own families and their own children. If an individual wishes to wear masks, then they should be able to. If a person doesn't wear a mask, then they should be able to as well. There's numerous people in this audience right now wearing masks, as well as you all. Not a single person has told you to take the mask off your face. Why should you tell us to put a mask on our face?
Sir, your time is
Hey,
up, but
that's
thank you
fine.
very much.
If you continue to wear masks, I can guarantee you're going to see a lot of me in the future, and I'm going to have more than 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. The next speaker is Janelle Polley.
Janelle Polley, 1041 High Street. I'm here again because your COVID restrictions make no sense. There's been no change since the last meeting and no explanation of the science. And because there's been no explanation, I have some questions. What data are you looking at to make your mask mandates? Are you comparing districts with different mask policies? Are you waiting to have a certain length of time in your data? We are 18 months in, so what is the goal? No cases? A percentage? Is it the money from the federal government that is swaying your decision? I'd like each of you to answer this question. Have you, or has this district, been offered or led to believe that there would be an offer of money or an increase in money from any federal or state funds directly or indirectly in exchange for mandating masks? The reason I ask is because I read the DPI website, and it says that in order for the district to get ESSER 3 funds, the state must apply and explain how they will help the school follow CDC guidelines to the greatest extent. And the school must also apply and explain how they will follow the CDC, including a bullet point that lists universal mask wearing. And now this district is looking at an allocation of $715,000 for ESSER 3 plus the additional based on hours of in-person instruction. So I'm willing to listen to anything else you can offer as an explanation, but up until I read the ESSER requirements, I really wasn't sure why you guys would even subject yourselves to the burden of making a decision to begin with. Why bother? We have the health department that already has that responsibility. Why not just leave it to them? But since you've chosen to make a decision, my next question is, why do you mandate it? Why not just take the time? Each of you can explain your logic and science and convince us to wear masks. I'm willing to wear a mask if you can explain to me why it makes sense. I just wore one up here. So tonight I'm going to help you. Calling me an idiot doesn't change my mind, doesn't convince me to wear a mask. To convince me to wear a mask, I need to know 3 things. I need to know what you believe in, I need to know why you believe it, and I need to know that you care about me. So let's break this down. Do I know what you believe in? Nope, because you, as a board, won't have the proper debate and discussion to present all sides of the issue. You ignore half the parents, and now you have this division. You've chosen this. Why? Is it the federal government that swayed you? Do you not understand the science in order to explain it? Or do you believe that the people in this room aren't worthy of an explanation? The second part, why do you believe it? The government told me so doesn't cut it anymore. I can't answer this question because you don't give us any information, and the only thing I have to work on is the ESSER grant money. The third point, do you care about me? Do you care about the people on that side of the room? Do you care about their success and their kids' opportunities? Do you care about the people behind me? Some of them have immunocompromised kids who are at risk, and you've convinced them that they are safe in school because there's a mask mandate. But are they? Are cloth masks effective? The mask I walked up here with, I bought for $12 off of Fake Mask USA. And I found that website on a parent group in town. So why not just be honest with people? Why not be honest with the people behind me? I'm not sure if you realize this, but advocating for masks that have zero efficacy is actually false advertising according to Wisconsin state statute.
Ms. Polley, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we thank everyone for the willingness to come and share your views with us. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which includes the approval of Start College Now, which used to be called Youth Options, which enables our students to go to a post-secondary institution and take selected offerings as a senior. The next item is the approval of our regular Board of Education minutes of September, the October 4th Facilities Committee proceedings, the Treasurer's Report, vouchers and invoices, and the personnel report. So I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? Comments? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Brianna Beslick.
Aye.
Dawn Delaney.
Aye.
Ken Imers.
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
Abstain.
Robert D'Imperio.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0 with one abstention. Moving into the action items, the first item is approval of a resolution to authorize the sale of bonds for a short-term borrowing. Ms. Naylor explained that during the Facilities Committee meeting. Are there any other questions that anyone has of Ms. Naylor? Other, I would entertain a motion for adoption of the resolution.
I move the board approve a resolution authorizing the issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of a taxable tax and revenue anticipation promissory note for cash flow purposes in the amount not to exceed $1 million. The entire motion will be printed in the meeting minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion, questions? Hearing none, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Dawn Delaney.
Aye.
Ken Imers.
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
Aye.
Brianna Beslick.
Aye.
Robert D'Imperio.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. The next item is approval of the revision to the Safe Return to In-Person Instruction and Continuity of Service Plan. Dr. Olson discussed that during her report. I understood that that was focused on clarification of notification and contact tracing in the event that a student was confirmed with COVID. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for approval of the revisions.
Ken Imers.
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
We need a motion.
Yes,
I'm
motion
sorry.
first.
I go.
I'll move the board approve the revisions to the Safer in-Person Instruction and Continuity of Service Plan as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, now we can have a roll call vote.
Can I
Oh, you may ask a
Yeah.
question.
because this is brought up again, and because I did it 2 months ago, I propose a motion to amend the Safe to Return in-person instruction and community service plan to have masks optional for 7th to 12th graders, because the 7th to 12th graders have the option to get vaccinated.
So There is a motion, there was a motion made to approve the revisions to the plan. And your motion would effectively be an amendment to that motion.
Yes, I amend the motion to have math optionals for 7th to 12th graders.
So I would, so I would ask if there is a second to that motion. So I will second the motion so that we can have a discussion on the motion. So, and the rationale for that,
Is because that 7th to 12th graders are 12 and up, and the rationale being that they can be vaccinated.
any other questions or comments?
I still believe that masks make things safer, even with the vaccination.
Any other questions? No?
So do we vote on the amendment?
The
or
amendment.
The first vote will be on the amendment to the original motion. So it asks for a roll call vote, please.
Ken Imers,
Can I clarify here? This is the amendment that Amy,
Yes.
Yes, you're voting on it.
The amendment is to further revise the plan to require face coverings for grades 7 through 12. Correct?
To make it optional.
To make it optional.
optional.
To make it optional.
Yeah.
nay.
Amy Litcher,
Yes.
Brianna Beslick,
Nay.
Dawn Delaney,
Nay.
Robert D'Imperio,
Aye. So the motion fails.
So now do we go back to the original?
Now we have a roll call vote on the original motion.
Amy Litcher,
Nay.
Brianna Beslick,
Aye.
Dawn Delaney,
Aye.
Ken Imers,
Aye.
Robert D'Imperio,
Aye. Motion carries. So, the next item is the approval of the school perception survey. And I'd ask for a motion for its approval.
I move the board approve the school perception survey.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions? May I have a roll call vote, please?
Amy Litcher,
Aye.
Brianna Beslick,
Aye.
Dawn Delaney,
Aye.
Ken Imers,
Aye.
Robert D'Imperio,
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. The next we have requests for early graduation. It is my understanding that these requests have been reviewed by the respective administrators and are recommending the approval for the early graduation. So I would entertain a motion for approval.
I move to the board approve the early graduation requests as presented.
Second?
Moved and seconded, noting that there are 6 seniors who are requesting this. If there are no questions, I would ask for a roll call vote.
Brianna Beslick,
Aye.
Dawn Delaney,
Aye.
Ken Imers,
Aye.
Amy Litcher,
Aye.
Robert D'Imperio,
Aye. Motion carries. The next is the approval of a bus bid. This was discussed in the Finance Committee. This would be the purchase of a replacement bus that would occur in the 22-23 school year. So I'd entertain a motion for its approval.
I move the board approve the purchase of a 2022 stock IC International 72 passenger conventional school bus from Mid-State Truck Service in the amount of $91,950.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further questions of Ms. Naylor? Hearing none, may we please have a roll call vote?
Dawn Delaney,
Aye.
Ken Imers,
Aye.
Amy Litcher,
Aye.
Brianna Beslick,
Aye.
Robert D'Imperio,
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Finally, we have approval of gifts, and again, The district is very grateful to the community for their willingness to go over and above. So I would ask for a motion approving those gifts.
I move the board accept the following gifts and thank the generous donors for their continued support of the students and programs of the Lake Mills Area School District. A $100 donation to the Math and Science Department from Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories. A $250 gift card to the Lake Mills High School Interact Club to purchase food items for the mill from Quick Trip, and 400 water bottles and 200 cookies for homecoming dance donated by Brenda Zimmerman.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Ken Imers,
Aye.
Amy Litcher,
Aye.
Brianna Beslick,
Aye.
Don Delaney,
Aye.
Robert D'Imperio,
Aye. Motion carries. Future agenda items.
We have a special board meeting on October 25th to approve the tax levy and also to approve the refinancing of current debt to a lower interest rate. And then at a regular board meeting on November 8th, we will be bringing forth a mask recommendation as part of the pandemic plan at that point. Also approval of the safety plan, which is a statutory requirement each year, as well as other items.
Okay. Ask for a motion for adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
Second the motion.
Moved and seconded. On a voice vote, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. The meeting is over.